listening to STR, the Sandy Times Radio.
Hello guys, you're listening to the podcast series Community Working Out. And in this episode we shift the focus to women in endurance sports and the communities that support them. We talk about female training realities, from cycles and recovery to confidence, safety and consistency, and why women-led groups create stronger, more sustainable athletes, about shared effort, mutual support, and how training together helps women stop adapting to sport and start shaping the reality. And I'm your host, Sophia Brontwine, the founder of the Sandy Times. For a long time, endurance sport didn't feel like a place designed for women. Running long distances, cycling for hours, training consistently, all of it was framed as something harsh, brutal, competitive. A male territory where toughness was loud and vulnerability was quietly discouraged. And even when women were present, the message often felt the same: adapt, push through, don't complain, don't take up too much space. What makes this especially complicated is that women don't train in a straight line. Our bodies are cyclical, our energy fluctuates, our recovery changes week to week. Hormones influence how we sleep, how we feel effort, how we respond to stress. Yet for years, the dominant training narrative told us that consistency meant sameness. Same pace, same effort, same expectations every single day. When that didn't work, we blamed ourselves. Still, women kept showing up. We showed up early in the morning, before work, after work, between responsibilities. We blended training with careers, families, relationships, emotional labor, and social expectations. Many of us didn't just train, we negotiated time, energy, and space for it. And often, we did it alone, thinking that struggling silently was part of the deal. But endurance sport doesn't have to be isolating to be serious, and strength doesn't have to look aggressive to be real. And this is where community changes everything. When women train together, something shifts. The focus moves away from proving and toward supporting, from comparison to context, from punishment to sustainability. Female communities don't exist because women are weaker or need special treatment. They exist because women understand, intuitively and through experience, that thriving is rarely a solo project. In these spaces, adaptation is normal. Asking questions is allowed. Taking rest isn't shameful. Progress isn't linear and no one pretends it should be. Women learn to listen to their bodies without guilt, to trust data without letting it define their worth, and to make ambition seriously without sacrificing their health. And this episode is about that shift. About what happens when women stop training against their bodies and start training with them. About how community helps women enter endurance sports, stay in them and grow within them, physically, mentally and emotionally. About visibility, representation and the quiet power of women who keep showing up, not perfectly, but consistently. Because endurance sport isn't just about distance or speed. For women, it's often about permission, and community is where that permission finally becomes collective. Chapter 1. The female body is not the problem. Once women begin training seriously, many of them encounter the same quiet frustration. They are doing everything right, training consistently, sleeping enough, eating well, following a plan, and yet the numbers suddenly stop behaving. Heart rate variability drops. Resting heart rate rises. Easy sessions feel harder than they should. Motivation wavers without a clear reason. In endurance culture, these signals are often framed as warnings: overtraining, lack of discipline, poor recovery. For women, that interpretation misses the point entirely. Female physiology does not operate on a flat line. It operates on a cycle. Hormonal fluctuations across the months directly affect cardiovascular response, nervous system regulation, thermoregulation, perceived effort, and recovery capacity. These changes are measurable, they are predictable, and they are not a sign of weakness. The problem is not the body, the problem is applying training logic that ignores how the body actually works. This is where misunderstanding turns into self-criticism. Women assume they're inconsistent when in reality they're responding accurately to internal physiological conditions. When those conditions are ignored, training becomes a constant fight against fatigue, against mood shifts, against signals that are trying to communicate something useful. Dr. Sladana Pavlovich, internal medicine specialist at Health Bay, explains this clearly and clinically.
So women naturally experience metric fluctuations throughout their cycle. Just before the period, HRV drops significantly, resting heart rate rises, and performance can feel a little off. It's important to know that this isn't a weakness, it's hormonal physiology. So basically the luteal phase, which is the second part of the cycle, is ideal for zone 2 mobility and technique work. The follicular phase is where strength, power, and endurance usually peak. So female athletes should train with their physiology, not against it. When you respect the cycle instead of fighting it, you perform better and reduce injury risk as well.
What matters here is not just performance, it's longevity. Training with the cycle doesn't mean doing less, it means doing the right work at the right time. Strength and intensity when the body supports it. Aerobic work, technique and recovery when the system is under higher internal stress. Understanding this shifts how women relate to data. HRV is no longer a verdict. RHR is no longer a moral judgment. Metrics become information, not identity. Asma Hilal Luta, founder of the 100 Wellness and the only Emirati woman to run the London Marathon as a UAE's flag bearer, describes how simple awareness changed her relationship with training.
I have an app that tracks my cycle, and the awareness alone changed that so much for me. There were days when I had low energy and I really had to push myself, but instead of thinking what's wrong with me, I would look at the app and understand, okay, this is where I am in my cycle and I should give myself grace.
That shift from blame to understanding is foundational. It doesn't make athletes softer, it makes them smarter. And Asma continues.
Whenever possible, with my coaches, we planned my training around it. Some phases were better for strength, some for lighter runs. It wasn't perfect, but honoring my body made the training more sustainable.
Sustainable is the key word. Endurance sport is not about one good week or one peak performance. It's about staying healthy, motivated, and mentally stable long enough for progress to compound. And for many women, the most difficult part of that process is not the training itself. It's allowing themselves compassion without guilt.
For me, the main lesson was compassion, knowing when to push and when to take it easier, but not feeling guilty about either.
This is where science and experience finally align. Training with physiology doesn't reduce ambition, it protects it. It allows women to stay in the sport instead of cycling through burnout, injury, and frustration. Once the body is no longer treated as a problem to fix, something else becomes possible. Women stop fighting themselves and start asking a different question. Not what's wrong with me, but where do I belong? That's where the social side of endurance sport enters the picture, and where community becomes just as important as physiology. Chapter 2. Safety before speed. Why women need each other to start. For many women, the hardest part of endurance sport is not the training plan, it's the threshold moment before it even begins. Walking into a space that has historically been loud, competitive, and male-dominated requires a specific kind of courage. Not the cinematic kind, the quiet one. The kind that shows up early, unsure where to stand, wondering if you belong before you have even clipped in. Endurance sports have long been framed as brutal by design. Aggressive group dynamics, ego-led pacing, drop culture disguised as motivation. For women, this environment doesn't just feel intimidating, it often feels unsafe, both physically and psychologically. And when safety is missing, consistency never follows. This is why women-led spaces matter, not as a soft alternative, but as a necessary entry point, a place where confidence can be built before performance is demanded. Najla Khalid, coach for Women Moving Forward with UAE team ADQ and the force behind women-only cycling rides in Dubai, puts it plainly.
I think that inclusivity is a barrier in terms of having a safe and supportive environment for women. I still believe they feel really intimidated to join a manly dominated sport. However, it's changing a lot. Last couple of years, it's becoming more of an inclusive sport.
What Najla names here is not fear of effort, it's fear of exposure. Fear of being watched, judged, measured against a standard that was never designed with women in mind. But change doesn't happen through slogans. It happens through numbers, through repetition, through showing up and not being the only one. Najla continues.
It's becoming better and better, and a lot of women got into the sport and they support each other. And there's a lot of local ladies, Emiratis, that are cycling as well, which I really love to see all the time. I think the numbers are increasing.
Numbers matter because visibility matters. When women see other women riding, running, struggling, sweating, not performing perfection, something shifts internally. The sport stops feeling foreign. It becomes possible. And once participation starts, the effects go far beyond fitness.
For me as a woman as well, cycling has helped me a lot psychologically, mentally, physically. I think it builds characters as well because it's beautiful but it's tough at the same time. It makes you more confident, you meet more people, you share same passion, you think the same way, you wake up all early, you go to bed all early. Also, it helps you to break barriers. It helps you mentally in the same way in life. If you want to do something, you get it done. So it's really similar and everything is really connected and related. So whatever you learn in sports, you can really implement it in your day-to-day life as a man and as a woman as well, yeah.
This combination, beauty and toughness, is where endurance sports quietly reshape identity, not through domination, but through persistence. There is an unspoken rhythm here. Shared habits create shared understanding. Early alarms, long rides, quiet discipline. These patterns don't just train the body, they stabilize life. And then comes the deeper shift.
Some girls are really strong, some of them are even stronger than men. Eventually, and sorry to say it, but most of the riders here in UAE, they think that going fast is fitness. Maybe we go fast, maybe we don't, but we really work hard, so we get stronger and stronger and stronger, and then we can go fast in a bigger group. And it's very important when you're going fast to be comfortable, not to be in your red zones. When you're on the red zone, then a lot of crashes can happen. So I work on all of these things with the girls that ride with me and then giving them all of these tips and helping them and supporting them, not just myself, but all other girls that ride in the community. It's going to make them much more confident and comfortable, and then they can really go and ride with anyone, whether they mixed groups or men only.
This is where sport stops being recreational and starts becoming formative. Effort becomes evidence, not just of fitness, but of capability. Najla draws a crucial distinction that explains why women-only spaces work so effectively.
Cyclists, if they are men and if they're riding in group, they literally ride to drop each other. But when we ride as women only, we ride to ride together. We support each other, everyone works in the front. So what I do in Women Moving Forward, which is a community that I lead and support in Dubai, it belongs to UAE Team ADQ and it's a representation of the community of the team. Now we try to help every new girl who joins the group by making her feel like safe and supported. So I help them in everything they need to know about cycling in the UAE and about cycling rules and cycling etiquette and how to ride safe on the track and how to communicate with other riders. And then they stay at the back of the group in the beginning, and eventually they will get stronger and stronger, and then they start to move to the front, and then they feel more confidence and they feel more empowered.
That sentence holds an entire philosophy: riding together instead of riding to eliminate. Progress measured by collective completion, not individual dominance. Strength defined by sustainability, not survival of the fastest. Women-only communities don't lower standards. They redefine success. They create environments where starting feels possible, where staying feels safe, and where growth doesn't require armor. And once that foundation is built, something remarkable happens. Women stop asking if they belong, they start shaping the culture themselves. Chapter 3. Visibility is power. When women lead, others follow. At some point, every woman who stays in endurance sport long enough hits the same invisible ceiling. It's no longer about starting or even about belonging. It's about whether ambition is allowed to grow without friction. Because while women have entered endurance sports in massive numbers, leadership, visibility, and authority still lag behind participation. Women are encouraged to join, but often quietly, to train, but not dominate, to perform, but not demand. And the problem is not confidence, the problem is infrastructure. When leadership is invisible, ambition feels risky. When role models are rare, progress feels accidental rather than designed. And when women don't see others like them occupying space unapologetically, they start negotiating with themselves instead of aiming freely. This is why visibility is not about inspiration posters or symbolic gestures. It's about changing the architecture of the sport itself. Melissa Moncada, president of the UAE team ADQ, speaks about this not as a theoretical issue, but as something she has lived from the inside of professional cycling, where equality is often discussed, but rarely implemented fully.
I believe one of the biggest misconceptions that today we have in women's cycling is that the community somehow perceives us as a less demanding cycling. They believe it's less tactical or it's less exciting that men's cycling could be. And in reality, women's peloton is so exciting, is so competitive, and the amount of hours of dedication and on training and preparation as the male is almost identical. We can see it as one of the best proofs is the Tour de France, that we have the opportunity of having now the third edition in 2025, and it's just an amazing show that every year is gathering more and more, let's say, support and views from the same fans that sees the Tour de France fame. One of the main objectives of UAE Team ADQ is that we show that when female athletes receive the same investment, and investment in technology, in science, in support systems, in an environment, in talent, in human capital, their performance is extraordinary. So I think it's very important to know that both of the industries need to have equality, 360%, and that's how we show that when you invest in the sport, the team evolves to level that you couldn't see before. Today our team is in the top 3 in the world, and we are totally redefining what is possible for female athletes globally.
Melissa's point cuts through a common narrative. Women don't need special treatment, they need equal conditions.
Year 2026 is gonna be my first decade in the country. You know, when I moved in 2016, especially to Abu Dhabi, it was totally a different country, right? And when I moved, because I practiced sports since my teenagers, cycling, it was so important for me before I moved to the UAE, and it was part of the things that I missed the most, not having a female community that I can be part. Even though I love to be in both genders activities, it's a little bit intimidating when you go and you're only with men or you don't see women in the streets doing the sport that you love. I think the shift has been remarkable. In just a few years, especially in the last 5 years after COVID, we have seen a real commitment of elevating women's sports, especially in the project that we have, that is female cycling. UAE Team ADQ is the first and the only team that represents Middle East. And we have been amazing achievements, right? As having our champion, our Emirati champion, Safiya Al-Sayegh, being in the Olympics, opening the ceremony of the Olympics in Paris, representing cycling, representing female voice of the UAE and of GCC countries. It was just really magical, and seeing how also she represents the country in the World Championship of Cycling for first time in history, as female cyclists were never there before. A show of everything that is behind, right? And everything that is behind is coming from funding, from infrastructure, and from all the visibility that the leadership allows to create all these professional pathways as UATMDQ that they simply didn't existed before. I'm coming from a country, I was born in Colombia, and in Colombia I said that you almost born with bicycles in your veins because cycling is everywhere and it's a very strong culture in this sport, so you just have it for granted. But being in this beautiful country as UAE is, that is so young, right? We just got 54 years, and seeing all the amazing achievements because of the blessing of having excellent execution and one mission in the country allows us to feel that we are coming from such a grounded place that UATMDQ feel empowered and feel limitless. We have seen the participation of amateurs and semi-professionals growing in the country, and for us how we see every year more and more young girls entering in cycling and more Emiratis entering in cycling as a lifestyle. It shows how this cultural shift has been happening and how women belong every time more and more in what they call high performance environments. I think even though we are in the pinnacle of the high performance, it's very important for me to share that cycling doesn't have to be performance, right? I don't do performance myself. I lead this performance team, and I love to see human in the highest peak of performance, but I do cycling as a lifestyle, and I do cycling as a medicine, as a movement, and this is very important to show that is friendly with everybody. I think something that we are still missing is to have more consistency in the people that is participating with us, right? Because you need to be connected to the sport for a long time to start being able to see all your own progression, right? I think when you are in the sport and then maybe you come only every 2 months or every 3 months, we cannot really develop that growth and that benefits in yourself. So having more consistencies from our community is something that we believe that will still growing more. And as we see, the numbers of our community is growing, but we are not at the peak of that. I believe we have many years in front that will allow us to achieve a beautiful space where we're going to really be in the momentum. Following this path, the UAE has all the potential to become the global benchmark for women's sports and female leadership in performance. As we see today, the UAE is one of the capitals of cycling. We can see it with all the developments that the government is doing in Abu Dhabi with the velodrome, right? That is going to be one of the top 3 in the world. I believe it's 1,500 kilometers of cycling lane that is happening between or across Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Al Ain, which is beautiful, and seeing all the cycling centers being awarded by the UCI as the first Asian city, so not only Middle East, but Asian city to be a bike city friendly city. And just having all the UCI World Championships that has been happening and will be happening in Abu Dhabi, it just show how UAE is really shaping the industry, and having the teams being Abu Dhabi owned and representing the country. It just show that today UAE exists as a capital of cycling, and I hope that with all these tools and all this momentum and all these possibilities, female cycling will be also represented by the UAE.
Visibility in this sense is cumulative. It builds trust. It builds expectation. Leadership, when done right, doesn't just change results. It changes permission structures. It tells the next generation that ambition is not something to justify, that permission becomes deeply tangible when leadership appears close to home, embodied by someone who shares cultural context, language, and lived reality. Asma Hilal Luta, founder of the 100 Wellness Center and the only Emirati woman selected as UAE flag bearer at a World Marathon Major, describes what visibility feels like from inside the experience, stripped of glamour and framed by effort.
When I received the email saying I'd been selected to walk in the UAE Parade of the Nations at the New York City Marathon, I felt genuinely humbled and flattered. Honestly, I didn't expect it, but it meant a lot to me. And honestly, on that day, I was so jet lagged, exhausted, and it was so freezing. I was like, can I do this? I'm too tired. But then I told myself, listen, Asma, you have to show up. This means so much. I pushed myself and I did it. I showed up.
This is not the language of victory. It's the language of responsibility. Asma is explicit about why this visibility matters beyond her own journey.
Walking with the UAE flag, representing my country on such a global stage, it was a very proud moment for me. It symbolized possibility. I'm 49 and honestly, I don't see age as a barrier at all. I actually feel stronger and more curious now than ever. I hope that me doing this will be an inspiration for older Emirati women. I mean, if they see I can do it, maybe they can. And also not just for women, but for men, for anyone. There are a lot of women who need movement the most. And if my journey encourages even one of them to start, then that's already a huge achievement for me.
Her definition of achievement is intentionally expansive. Support here is not framed as motivation, but as stability. This is what real visibility creates. Not pressure to perform, not comparison, but continuity. When women are visible as leaders in endurance sport, not as exceptions, not as inspirational footnotes, but as architects, the sport itself evolves. Entry becomes less intimidating, ambition becomes less apologetic, progress becomes sustainable. And once that shift happens, women no longer need courage just to begin. They start already knowing they belong. Chapter 4. Removing the pressure to perform. By the time women reach this stage of endurance sport, many of them are already strong, not just physically, but mentally. They have learned discipline, they have learned consistency, they have learned how to push through discomfort. What they are often still learning is something much harder: how to exist in sport without constantly measuring themselves. Because performance pressure doesn't disappear when you leave competition behind. It sneaks into group settings, into wellness spaces, into even the most well-intentioned communities. It shows up as comparison, as pace anxiety, as a quiet question of whether you are doing enough. And women, especially, are fluent in pressure. Pressure to improve, pressure to look effortless, pressure to balance everything without visibly struggling. This is why not every community heals in the same way. Some groups motivate through intensity, others through metrics, and for many women that simply recreates the same environment they're trying to escape. Another place where value is measured, ranked, optimized. This is where the idea of removing performance becomes radical. Safia and Sarah Faisal, founders of the Pause Club, articulate this shift with disarming honesty.
Although I love a great workout, I still think working out brings a level of performance that you need to kind of do, and the pressure that comes with it of trying to do better than the last time you worked out or trying to do better than the other person in the group. But with stillness and presence and building a community around just having a conversation or just coming and doing some art therapy, you remove the pressure of performance. And I think when you experience that, it's really liberating for a person. And in a time where there's so much expectation on women, I think having a community around that is really appreciated by women.
This is not a rejection of effort. It's a redefinition of value. What they are pointing to is something subtle but powerful. Not every form of growth requires output. Sometimes growth comes from permission, from presence, from spaces where improvement isn't demanded, but emerges naturally once pressure is removed. In endurance sport, women are often praised for resilience, for pushing through, but resilience without rest eventually becomes survival mode. And survival mode is not where joy lives. Communities like this don't exist to replace training, they exist to balance it, to remind women that they are not projects in constant need of optimization, that their worth doesn't reset every time they miss a session or feel tired. Stillness here is not inactivity, it's recovery at a psychological level. And when women experience spaces where they are not assessed, not by pace, not by output, not by comparison, something interesting happens. They don't lose ambition. They regain clarity. They reconnect with why they started moving in the first place. This is especially important in a world where expectations on women are relentless. Be successful, but soft. Strong, but not intimidating. Disciplined, but flexible. Calm, but productive. A community that removes performance pressure doesn't make women weaker, it makes them whole. And from that wholeness, strength, real, sustainable strength, grows naturally. This is where endurance sport stops being another arena of self-judgment, and it becomes what it was always meant to be, a tool for living better and living together. And this is community working out. In the next episode of Community Working Out, we shift gears, literally. We are diving into cycling communities. Why the sport is exploding across the Middle East? Why so many people are choosing two wheels over therapy? And how cycling has quietly become one of the most powerful tools for mental health, resilience and identity in high-pressure cities like Dubai. We will talk about why cycling works, for the brain, for the body and for belonging. About solitude versus group rides, about suffering, flow and freedom. And about why climbing together somehow makes life feel lighter. See you next week, and I'm your host, Sophia Brandwein, the founder of the Sandy Times.